Words are about to be spoken on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you by the Podcast Seat and the Ad Free Shows Network. I'm John Alba. That's the broken one, woken one, spoken one himself, Mr. Matt Hardy. We are back at it after House Hardy took a little vacation this past week, but they're back in the Hardy compound, and we are back on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. What's up, man? How was the vacation?
It was lovely. It was nice. It was top notch. It was a madhouse, myself and the Queen with 4 children. That used to be 8-6, 4 and 2, but during the course of this trip, they became 8-7, 4 and 2, and they're about to be 9-7, 4 and 2. So it was a long 6 days, but it was a good 6 days. We went to Myrtle Beach for Woofy's birthday. It was his birthday last Saturday on June the 8th. We went and did all kinds of stuff. It was like a whirlwind trip. They wanted to go to the beach. He specifically wanted to go to the beach. We went to the beach a couple times during the day. We went to this pool. There were 6 or 7 pools at the resort we stayed at. We went to medieval times. We went to like all these different attractions and whatnot. We packed a lot of stuff in 3 days in Myrtle Beach. So that was a lot of fun. And then we left from there. We went to Savannah. We hung out in Savannah for the day. Then we drove down to Jacksonville, where we officially appeared at St. Augustine's, and we did the River City Wrestling Con on Saturday and Sunday. And thank you so much for everyone that came out Saturday. Myself and Jeff, we signed for 6.5 hours straight, which was killer. And then Sunday, we also had a big turnout as well. And Gothic Baby and Queen Rebecca did really good as well. They were also there appearing, but all the kids were there. All the kids took pictures with fans. All the kids were meeting, greeting, and deleting. So it was a lot of fun, man. It was a really, really nice time. Even though it was a long trip and it was a whirlwind trip where we packed a lot in those 6 days, it was a great time.
I heard that Broken Matt's vessel must have been medieval at some point, because the medieval times nights were Matt Hardy marks, I heard.
Oh my God. Oh yes. Well, I think their great grandfathers, whenever they were doing the medieval times, the essence of Broken Matt Hardy actually worked with them. So they recognized my essence immediately. Their essence recognized my essence. And they were giving me deletes. They were giving me V1s. They were giving me the guns. And at the end, they said, "Hey, can we take a picture?" I said, "Hey, you want to reimburse all my ticket prices and whatnot?" Get you a deal, brother. They gave us some handouts at the end, but it was a great time. We had a good time, and it's very cool because I think Woofy and Maxwell, they will totally remember this trip. They've been there before when they were much younger, but they didn't remember. Now, this time they had a great time, and it was so funny just watching them eat with their hands. It was so unnatural to them because
primal.
Their mother is on their ass, to be proper and eat the right way. And, me on the other hand, as I said in a video, that's my wet dream, to be able to sit there and eat with your hands. That's how I grew up. Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ, tap into your animalistic and primal instincts.
That's right. The primal instincts. Well, I'm glad they had a great time. It looked like it was a lot of fun. Yeah. Where you are, I'm spoiled because where I've lived most of my life, like in the multiple spots, I've been a pretty close drive to the beach, and where you are, it's not like an easy trip to the beach. So the kids probably haven't gotten a chance to experience the beach a whole lot in their lives. So that must have been really cool for them.
Yeah, they have. I mean, we're here. The closest beach is about, if we go to a North Carolina beach, like Surf City, Topsail beach, that's roughly 2 hours, right? Myrtle Beach is a little bit further. It's about 2.5. And they have been, but they're at that age now. I feel like Maxwell and Woofy, they're at that age when me and Jeff, we love the beach. We just couldn't wait to get down there and get out and like jump on the waves and ride the waves as they were doing. It was just such a cool thing to be out in this large body of water. Yeah. So they really dig it now, and they dig playing in the dirt and everything else that comes along with it. So I'm sure going forward, because of their love for it, following this trip, it's going to be something that's going to be a regular stop for House Hardy, even though Rebecca's not always crazy about it. She's not necessarily a big beach, get dirty in the sand person. The kids love it.
Well, she doesn't have to worry, because you and I and Jeff Hardy are headed to the beach in Atlantic City, July 13th. This was just announced a couple weeks ago, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it here on the podcast. It is the Hardy Party, a night with the Hardys at 90s Wrestling Con in Atlantic City, New Jersey, July 13th. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the ACX1 Studios on the Pier at Caesars. Tickets are $60. Matt Hardy, this is a live show unlike the which we have ever done before, is it not?
You are correct. This is going to be a very, very unique show, because this isn't just the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy live podcast. This is also a live Brother Nero Jeff Hardy concert. This is a night out with the Hardys. It is a Hardy party. We are doing a live podcast, myself and John. And then Jeff and his guitarist, they're going to be performing a concert right after. You buy one ticket and you get into both. 2 for 1. What a deal.
This is going to be so much fun. We've been thinking about doing something like this for a long time now. If you listen to last week's episode of The Extreme Life, which was our live show from WrestleCon with Mike Chioda, you heard how much of a fun time that was. It was a total blast. I think it was probably our best live show that we've ever done. You never know what's going to be heading our way in Atlantic City with the Night with the Hardys. It's 90s Wrestling Con, so I figure we're probably going to talk about some 90s stuff, some Attitude Era stuff. And then Jeff Hardy with his eccentric Brother Nero mind, and the songs that he's written are so deeply personal to him. I know it's going to be a very special night, and for $60, man, to get 2 events for the price of 1, you can't beat something like that.
I promise you cannot. We're going to give you 3 to 3.5 hours of entertainment. It is going to be the best $60 you have ever spent. I promise. And these are a couple of mine and Jeff's new passions. It's our new loves. You know, I love doing this podcasting game. I love recalling the past, and I love talking about the present, and I love predicting the future of pro wrestling. So it's a lot of fun to listen to myself and John. And we're going to have some special guests there as well. There's going to be all kinds of people at the con the day earlier. So they'll be there. Jeff, he does his singing and he blows you away. He has become such a great entertainer, and his passion and his work that he's done on his voice and just his songs is incredible. And you will see it shining through as you watch him perform. And we also, earlier that day, there's just going to be a con where you can come in, you can meet, greet, and delete with the Hardys. It's going to be your chance to meet us. If you've never met us before, if it's a bucket list item that you want to cross off, you can meet us earlier that day. So it's going to be an action-packed day, to say the least.
As Bruce Springsteen said, meet me tonight in Atlantic City. You can meet the Hardys. You can meet me in Atlantic City at the Pier at Caesars. If you've never been to Atlantic City, there's surprisingly a lot of wrestling history in Atlantic City, and I think we're going to get a chance to hit on some of that because I know some of those early WrestleMania memories are probably near and dear to you over there. And here's how you get your tickets. You go to www.hardyboyslive.com. That's boys with a Z. That's www.hardyboyslive.com. Tickets are $60. Live Q&A, Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, live Jeff Hardy podcast. It is going to be absolutely wonderful. I cannot wait for this show. Anything else you want to say on it, Matt?
Yeah, and when you're talking about Atlantic City and its deep history in wrestling and those early WrestleManias, WrestleMania 4 was the pay-per-view. It was the event where Macho Man won the world title, and without that event, I don't know if Matt and Jeff Hardy decided to chase down the dream of being professional wrestlers. That was the event that ended up inspiring both of us, and it happened right there in Atlantic City. So it's very, very cool to be going back and doing our live shows there in Atlantic City.
Very excited, especially since it will be nice and close to me, which makes life a lot easier for me. So I cannot wait. You're coming to my turf. Very excited. Going to be a great time. Hope to see all the Hardy Boys fanatics out there for this live show. All right, Matt. We are talking about AJ Styles this week on the podcast, someone who has got a lot of TNA history himself that I'm sure we'll discuss. But before we can get into him, a busy week on the TNA front for you. As if you're listening to this, especially on ad-free shows, this is dropping right afterwards. We just saw a very unique segment at the Hardy compound where the system made a visit, and it seems like there's a bit of their minds got lost in the sauce at the Hardy compound. What did we just see, man?
We were waging mental warfare on the system, and that is exactly what we did. We were going to break them mentally before I break Moose physically. And if you're listening to this early Friday morning at 6 a.m., as you should be, you'll see it tonight. Myself and Moose, one-on-one, we are the main event of a sold-out venue for a TNA show, a TNA major event where I am wrestling him for the world title. And my goal as Broken Matt Hardy was to come back and procure the championship of the world. And that happens tonight. I will stop at nothing to win the title. And if my survival means his total destruction, if it means the total destruction of the system, then so be it.
Matt Hardy is, in fact, hard to kill, as is this show. The kids were pretty involved in this segment, man. I'm sure they really rose to the occasion here to be a part of that. Some Queen Rebecca action, too. How was that whole experience filming with the kids?
It was interesting. Maxwell was very, I mean, he wanted to go higher off the ladder. He wanted to just do it in one take and be done with it. He was going to drop the leg drop. He didn't give a shit. He's already fearless. I can see that in his eyes. It was very interesting because this was really the first time the children had delivered verbiage. They had lines, and really proud of how they did, because it's crazy, especially when you're so young. You have to think about it. When this was shot, Max was 8 years old, Woofy was 6. Really proud of Woofy. He did really good out there. Barty was great at 4 years old, interacting with Moose, this big, intimidating guy. And he wasn't intimidated at all. Woofy at the beginning was a little intimidated, but when we said, "Hey, Barty's not, we'll give Barty your spot. If you don't step it up," he stepped it up and he killed the game. It was so good. And then Evie and Rebecca, their thing was so much fun, and I think it was so good for the Gothic Baby and Queen Rebecca brand in general, because it played into their characters and what they do. And Evie is so good at that. She is very, very, very natural when it comes to performing. When you tell her to put on her mean face, she knows exactly what to mean. She knows exactly what you mean, and she'll get right into character, which is so funny. But she was very happy with that. We watched that back. And as soon as it ended, they said, "Can we watch again? Can we watch again?" And that's kind of how they are. That is their mindset. They loved it so much. And if you look at that, if you watch the systematic descent, as I have coined it, into madness, I think there's a pretty good opportunity. These guys can be pretty damn good sports entertainers or pro wrestlers when they get older. So it's going to be interesting to follow their journey, because they're just asking, when can we do this again? When can we do this again? We want to do another wrestling match. We want to do another fight here at the Hardy compound. So they loved it and enjoyed it. And that was very important to me, that they were excited and they legitimately enjoyed it themselves.
Yeah, I think Wolfie and Evie are the performers of the family. They're the artists of the family. Little dramatic, maybe. Perhaps?
Yeah, yes, they both are. I mean, she's a girl, so she's going to be a little more emotional. She's going to be a little more dramatic. But Wolfie is very performative, and he's also very dramatic. He's quite the exaggerator. I don't know where they could get that from, but they actually are quite good performers. And then with Barty and Maxwell, they're going to be straightforward ass kickers, that aren't afraid. Especially Barty, as he gets older, they're going to be physically the guys. I think Woofy is going to be the more of the performer, or the Michael P.S. Hayes who speaks and is the charismatic guy of the group. But Maxwell and Barty are going to be straightforward ass kickers. They're both very good athletes already.
When I was a baby, all babies randomly cry, they throw temper tantrums, whatever it is.
Sure.
And my late grandmother would always make excuses for me. And my mom would be like, why is he upset? Why is he crying? And my grandmother would say, he's a performer. He's expressing himself. And I feel like there's a hint of that going on there over at House Hardy, which is A-okay, man. They did a great job, and they should all be very proud of themselves.
You are all emoting.
Exactly. Acting and scene. But they did a great job, and that's so cool that you got to talk about life memories. You're gonna have that forever with them. That's so cool.
Yeah, and also something I think that was very cool is something that was very visually stimulating in this was our house has been redone. So there were so many different sites that people haven't seen before, even kind of getting that in-depth look at the arcade down there and then into the gym, whatever. You saw a lot of very visually stimulating stuff in our house. And we also went over to the Legends house, which was myself and Jeff's childhood home. And we went in there, and the scene I did with Moose, where I was giving him a walk through my history down memory lane. And that was cool, because that was an area that has never been part of the Hardy compound. It's never been part of the Broken Universe, and it was cool that it has now entered into the Broken Universe.
Very, very cool stuff. I enjoyed it. It's campy, it's silly, it's fun, and it just pushes the boundaries on what pro wrestling can be. So that's always good. And I know you try to look at pro wrestling that way, where it can be a lot of different things. And this is just one of those flavors of ice cream that you put out at the buffet,
Yes, I will say this: pro wrestling at the end of the day is entertainment, and if you're entertaining people, putting smiles on faces, and that means if watching a 5-star match, watching a banger is your thing, and that entertains you, then good for you. But also, there are other ways you can entertain people. I mean, this is going to be a segment that appeals to many different people that just like the entertainment and the sports entertainment aspect of pro wrestling. You know what I mean? It was a very unique way of telling a story, and I felt like for us, it was very different, because it's the first time where you question yourself, like, were these guys hallucinating? Did this really happen, or did it happen and then they were out again, after they fell into the trap of booby? And it was fun because it was a different path. We'd never done this in the Broken Universe, so to say. And it really cues up tonight's match once again, which I'm so happy and so proud of TNA that it is sold out. Over 1,300 people are going to be in that venue. So it's a very, very cool deal.
It's going to be a really fun experience over the years, Matt, to see how your kids roll with the Broken Universe and performing. And maybe one day we'll be able to look back and say, hey, remember when they did this? And that's so cool. I love that. And I popped at Senor Benjamin watching the Final Deletion on the big screen too, and even cropping out the little Pop TV logo that was just in the corner. I was like, man, what a throwback to yesteryear that was. TNA has come a long way.
Good utilization of everyone. We had Senior Benjamin had a very busy. He had some stuff that was going on that night, so he had a cameo. Vanguard 1 had a cameo. The Lake had a cameo. It's funny, the cross that was in the background behind the lake. I don't know if you caught that or not.
Yes,
Jeff just built that. He had just like constructed that, right? And he just said, hey man, if you guys when you're shooting out there, try and get my cross in. I'd really like to get that in. That'd be so cool. He was so happy that made the cut.
So there's a Jeff Hardy cameo in there.
Yeah, there's a couple Jeff Hardy cameos for sure. References,
Easter eggs,
Jeff Hardy, Easter eggs, and even like the Easter egg. I think was so cool. We put a lot of thought in this. Like when Brian Myers, if you look and you pause, when Brian Myers is picking up each figure, it's like the evolution of Matt Hardy. It's like Matt Hardy starting, and then the next one, and they almost increase in value with each one too.
With the one that he picked up and said, "Well, that's an upgrade." Was that the Major Bendy figure?
The one that was an upgrade? No, that wasn't the Major Bendy figure. That was the one he picked up with the upgrade. I think that was the broken Matt Hardy that matched the cardboard stand up.
I figured that was going to be him putting his shit over. So that was
when he we didn't have that figure wasn't in existence when this originally happened, but he bent over and got the Chase figure from AEW, which is very valuable. And it's funny looking through his legs, and then behind, the ghost of Adam Copeland was doing this, which was pretty tremendous. He had to face the skeletons of his past.
I know the School of Cardona and Myers marketing, and I figured that was going to be their way into that. But that's great stuff, man. I love it. It's going to be a great show, and Matt in the main event, very cool. And you never know what can happen. You never know where things will lead. You never know who's going to show up. You never know what the next chapter. Anything can happen in the Total Non-Stop Action Wrestling Federation.
And anything can happen in the extreme life of Matt Hardy.
It's very true. Speaking of someone who's in the periphery of the extreme life of Matt Hardy, Ethan Page, All Ego Ethan Page, main evented the NXT Premium Live event this week. He lost to Trick Williams, unfortunately for him. But, he got the spot, a spot that I think a lot of people have been hoping he'd be experiencing at some point. What'd you think of your pal Ego here?
Full disclosure, I still got to go back and watch the match, and I want to, but I'm very proud of him. Very happy for him. Glad he's getting this opportunity, and obviously, I wish him nothing but success. And I don't even think I have to wish him, because I think he is so talented. He is so good, and he is so on top of his shit. I think he's going to do great there, and I think he's going to kill it, because he gets the opportunity. And at NXT and WWE, being a sports entertainer is looked upon a little more proudly. It is looked upon with a bit more of a smile, so I think it gives him a lot more room for like upward movement.
There's a little mini AEW reunion on NXT TV even this week too, with Cody, Ego, Sean Spears, and Lexus King, formerly Brian Pillman Jr. A little winking and nod, a little cheeky there.
I like that. Anytime you can give a little wink and a nod, do it, baby.
Yeah, Cody is just so disgustingly the guy right now. It's pretty crazy to see just how well positioned he is in WWE as the franchise, and he's a part of this episode that we'll be talking about too with AJ Styles, because the two of them are going to be squaring off for the world title at Clash the Castle. Drew McIntyre, a little homecoming for him. It's funny, as we tape this, Matt, it's 10 years ago to the day that Drew McIntyre got released from WWE.
Interesting.
And to see where he is now, headlining a WWE pay-per-view on his home turf,
right?
Man, that's such a testament to his resilience, isn't it?
Sure, and it's also a great sign the people that go out and bust their ass and work hard and stay optimistic and believe in themselves and bet on themselves, that you can achieve anything when it's all said and done. And Drew was the perfect example. I mean, he had been in that rough spot. He was released, as you said, and just, I remember when he got out on his own and he was doing the indies, he was traveling, he was busting his ass all over the world. He was somewhere different every single week, every single weekend, and working so hard, getting into the best shape of his life. And that's when he was so driven and so motivated. And sometimes you need that kick in the ass of like feeling like everything's taken away from you to really motivate yourself to take it to another level. And he did. And at the end of the day, he just improved and he learned and he got better and he got more confident. And now he's back to where he belongs. And I love to see this, that he is headlining Clash at the Castle. It is such a cool deal.
You want a bold prediction from me here? Ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with booking.
Sure.
You know, his old pal Jinder Mahal got released a few months back.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's starting to be announced for some indie dates. I bet you Jinder Mahal Raj has an unbelievable rest of 2024 into 2025. Like, I think he's going to become one of the hotter commodities on the indies, and you're going to see a renaissance with him in its own right. And he's going to do some really cool, unique things. And I think you'll see him maybe not follow the Drew McIntyre path, perhaps, but I think he's going to be really successful. You have any thoughts on that or him as a performer?
I would totally buy that. I'm a huge fan of him.
You don't hinder Jinder?
No, bro. I'm all about Jinder, man. I love Jinder. I love him as a performer. I love him as a person. I think he's a great dude. And yes, I could totally see that. I could totally see a Jinder Mahal renaissance going forward in 2025. No doubt.
Glad that you don't hinder Jinder. I don't know
Not
if you
at
could
all,
have
man.
this podcast if you hindered Jinder.
Not at all.
You think Drew walks away?
There was one thing too that I wanted to add earlier. Oh my God, I may have lost it now that actually we got off the topic.
Oh,
okay, forget about it. No, it's all good.
I'm so sorry. Well, do you think Drew's going to win the title?
I would like to see Drew win the title. It's a little early to end Damian Priest his reign. But with that being said, he had the reign, much like when we won the World Tag Team titles the first time. It just kind of put us on the map and just put him on the map. His longer reign could come later, but I do feel like they're at a point where Drew is so hot and he's so good and he is just killing it on every single level. I would like to personally see Drew McIntyre win the title. And that's not because he's my friend. That's because I think would be best for business.
Well, and to get that moment, right, in his home territory, his home turf, to have that moment. And then you got to figure Punk's right around the corner. He's not too far off.
Sure.
That eventual match should be for the world title.
Yes.
So I would think that's around. And, you mentioned the point about Priest. Man, we're so preconditioned in this era right now where everyone's got to have a 6 to 9 to 10 month title reign minimum. I don't think we need
I
that.
am not.
Yeah. No, I'm saying the wrestling space is so conditioned to that.
Yeah, right.
I don't think we need. I think it's okay every now and then if someone has a shorter title reign. Adam Copeland, Edge, his first WWE Championship reign was like a month and a half long, not even.
Sure.
And that certainly didn't get in his way of being successful. So I don't see that as the end of the world.
Of course not. Especially, I mean, once you enter into that territory of like being an established world champion, I mean, Damian Priest won it. It was a big deal. He's got that on his resume. It can never be taken away. And now he can continue to build credit and equity within himself so that he could be, speaking of Maxwell Hardy, Maxwell, come in here.
Hi.
Maxwell, this airs after TNA. How did it feel to do that big leg drop off the ladder? Good? Were you afraid?
A little.
Yeah. Did you want to go higher?
A little.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you did. All right. All good. Thank you, man. Good stuff. Boom. Big star, King Maxwell Hardy. So yes, once again, I think when Damian Priest is ready to win the world title again, he's going to be a much bigger deal. He'll have a lot more equity in himself because he's going to continue to build himself from this, and he'll use it to catapult him to the next level. At this point, Damian Priest is someone who was helped by winning the world title. The next time around when he wins the world title, he's going to be a performer that is so good and so over and so established and has so much equity behind himself that he is going to help the world title.
There you go. The world according to Matt Hardy. Let there be light.
Let
him
there be
speak
light.
it. That's good stuff. Good stuff, man. Well, we are talking about a guy that Drew McIntyre has worked quite a bit with, a guy that you've worked with over the years, AJ freaking Styles, one of the most talented performers of all time, certainly his generation. But before we can dive into him, you know what I got to ask? Please, Matt Hardy, hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact, Matt loathes driving through torrential downpours.
You have shared the story of you in Canada with Freebird and your brother and barely making it to the hotel alive. Did something else happen?
Yes, when we were driving back from St. Augustine, in South Carolina, we started getting like notifications on our phone, like, oh, severe thunderstorm upcoming. And for like 30 minutes, just the bottom fell out of it. So it was just one of those, like with the kids. And, you know, we've been driving for a while. So I was kind of tired. And it's very stressful because you want to be safe. And we were on a big interstate. There's all these transfer trucks going. It's just one of those things. I was just like, God, I hate driving in these torrential downpours. So it's like, oh, that's a mad fact. Let me put that down so I don't forget it. And it really does. I just kind of said that out of the blue. And that's how a lot of these mad facts come to life, right? Out of real life scenarios. So yeah, we had to withstand that for about 30 minutes. And it was just one of those things, man. Thundering, lightning, and just pouring down in sheets of rain where it was so hard you had to drive 20 miles per hour. And at that point, we're like, come on, man. This is a 6.5 hour drive. We just want to get home.
Surprised it wasn't Florida. Every day in Florida between March and November it hurricanes for like 20 minutes a day. And it's just, you think the world is going to end. It's wild. My first night living in Florida, I was driving on the highway and it rained so badly for a 20-minute period of time that my car was carried by the water. My brand new car that I just got, and I was terrified it was going to crash. And thankfully there wasn't anyone around me. But yeah, it's scary stuff, man. So I'm glad you guys were all right. Everything's all right here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy because we're talking about AJ Styles. Matt Hardy, on the onslaught here. AJ Styles, where does he stand in terms of all-time great performers?
I mean, when it comes to technical ability and being able to wrestle, being able to strike, being able to fly, AJ Styles, he's up there because he's very qualified in all those things. And I feel like he got the opportunity at TNA to show a lot of his personality, and I know a lot of people ragged him for that, but I feel like WWE brought even a lot more personality out of him, and just the way he spoke and the way he interacted, I felt like helped things a lot. So I would say when it comes to smaller guys, they're big, thick, stocky guys like AJ is. He definitely is head and shoulders above most other people in that category because he really can do it all.
And his career is so fascinating because while he had a lot of success, it really took until much later for him to get the platform that he long deserved and to become the world-renowned star in the general audience eyes, the casual fan eyes, as you would like to say.
Correct.
Then he probably deserved. He probably deserved that a lot sooner because he just celebrated his birthday this past week, and that's why we're doing this show. And he's also main eventing this Clash of the Castle show with Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. AJ turned 47 years old. And Matt, I feel like there's a lot of parallels in your career with AJ Styles. He was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and
look at that.
He grows up in a very poor household, lower class household where the family has to work for everything that they earn. He doesn't even have cable, so he can't even watch wrestling. He's not exposed to that at that time. And his first break actually comes when he's in high school and he takes up amateur wrestling and eventually gets a scholarship to wrestle in college. Those guys that have that amateur wrestling background, what does that do for them?
It gives them an incredible base to build upon, because like pro wrestling in so many ways is learning physical control of your body, and how you fall, how you move, how you strike in many, many ways. And nothing prepares you better for that than amateur wrestling. Because if you can go out there and you can amateur wrestle for, 3 or 4 rounds. I mean, it's some of the most physically taxing stuff you will ever do because there is no downtime at all. So if you can go out and do that, it definitely whips you into shape, no doubt. And it makes you into a better athlete and a better competitor. But also on top of that, just wrestling now has grown where so many people are attracted. There's such a huge percentage of the fan base that love like solid technical wrestling, and if you have that background and you look legit while you're doing it, it comes off to people that way, that you are legit. So I think that's a very beneficial quality to have.
A bunch of his friends went to a pro wrestling school to check it out and see what it was about, and AJ wasn't really exposed to it at the time, but he decided, let me see what I got. Turns out he was natural. One might even say he was phenomenal, and he ends up breaking into the business at the late 90s. And in 2001, Matt, he gets his big break in WCW, part of the tag team Air Raid. One problem, he comes into the company at the beginning of 2001, and they're out of business just a couple of months later.
Right.
Do you remember hearing about AJ at that time? Because even in his short run, he really was very, very good in that cruiserweight division.
I remember hearing about AJ Styles. The first time I remember hearing about AJ Styles is when he was doing NWA Wildside, which was an indie promotion that had TV out of Georgia. And myself and Jeff worked with them when they were in CW back in Sylva, North Carolina, and they relocated in Georgia. I remember it was 99, 2000. We were doing good, and I kept hearing about this guy who was making waves. Alan Jones, AJ Styles, and he was doing all this magnificent stuff. He was like doing this cool high flying, and there were so many people that said, "Oh my God, this guy is like the next Hardy Boy in many, many ways because of the stuff he's doing in the wrestling." So I heard some hype about him, and then I also remember hearing at some point said like, "Oh man, he was very motivated by you guys and watching you guys." And I've never really had that conversation with him in depth. And I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe someone exaggerating just told me that, trying to impress me. But I do remember hearing a big buzz about him on the indie scene in NWA Wildside. And I thought that was very cool when he was going to get an opportunity to be in WCW as well. I was very happy for all those young guys. They got an opportunity to go to WCW and work and make a living there.
He, however, when the company folds, is not brought in to WWF. He has a couple tryout matches during that time. I think he actually, even on an episode of Metal in 2002, faced none other than the Hurricane and lost to him.
Correct.
Of course, Hurricane wrestled him in WCW as well. Why do you think AJ wasn't brought in with guys like Shane?
I just think we were still in that era and that mentality where Vince was running. This was just a guy that was a smaller guy who didn't have a larger-than-life personality. He was just a solid worker who was a flippy guy, a great wrestler or whatever, but didn't have anything that made him stand out, or he didn't have like a strong fan base behind him. So I would imagine that was the reason why. I do remember that when he wrestled against Shane, and I remember Shane put over AJ really big and tried to make that match as good as possible to try and get AJ hired because he really liked AJ. And I remember talking to AJ and kind of meeting him for one of the earliest first times during that experience with Shane.
What was your first impression of him?
I thought he was a nice guy. I've always laughed about his accent, being very Southern. I tried my best to overcome my Southern accent as much as possible. It kind of leveled out as time went on, but just his accent was very cute and adorable. And I thought he was just a good, decent guy. And those things are appreciated in pro wrestling. So I was very happy to see him get the opportunity, and I was hoping he would make it at some point. And once he kind of became, the face of the place when it came to TNA, I was super happy for him.
Do you think, and I'm being very serious in asking this, do you think that his accent and maybe naive approach held him back in the early days at all?
It could have at WWE. There was, it was pretty well known that like Vince wasn't a huge fan of like Southern accents unless he had someone portraying a particular character, because he usually branded them a specific way that they were slower or not as intelligent or whatever it may be. So yeah, that is a possibility.
So you mentioned TNA, and that's, AJ kind of finds himself in this purgatory after he doesn't get signed to WWE, because after WCW folds, there's not really anywhere to go. But TNA launches in 2002 and Ring of Honor launches in 2002. And simultaneously in those first 3 years, 02 to 05 or so, AJ is getting good work in both companies. He becomes the first X Division champion in TNA. He's doing these what people look back as iconic matches in Ring of Honor. And he's establishing himself as one of the best pure athletes and high flyers in all of wrestling. When did you start to see the buzz for AJ really pick up on a more mainstream level?
I mean, once he got hot in TNA and was the X Division champion and the Ring of Honor champion. Do you need me? Okay, perfect. Hi. You want to say hi?
What? No.
Just say hi to everyone. Just from there.
Hi.
Hi. Everyone here just watch the Systematic Descent.
What did you think? I want to tell you something real quick, hijacking the stream. The mail came and Evie came out to get the mail, and she looks at the mail guy. He comes out the truck, and the first thing she does is I don't know if she was expecting it to work, if she was trying to stunt, and then Barty starts like stooging everything off. We're on TV. She has powers. I'm like, Barty, shut up. Don't say nothing.
That's amazing.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, she's been doing that regularly.
That's great.
Too funny. There we go. Back to the Systematic Descent, guys. Everyone's excited. Yeah, I mean, AJ really got on my radar after he became X Division champion. He was having these really stellar athletic contests, these matches that you didn't see that often in WWE. And then Ring of Honor was doing a thing all to itself, which it feels very much is very reminiscent of how AEW has branded and promoted itself in many ways by just having like we're the best wrestle, having these great matches. So yeah, that's when he definitely got on my radar and I started picking up on him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's just like a matter of he's put in a position where his strengths are accentuated, right? Like
Yes.
he was a great pro wrestler. So
Yep.
he's put in these situations where he's having these X Division matches, him, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, and it's different than, right? We always talk about more, better than, less than, different than. Boy, we got a growler back there.
Yeah, that was Barty the Fearless guy. Sorry, he's an animal like me.
It's these matches are different than, and I think that's a big part of what added to AJ Styles' mystique almost, because you're like, I know that this guy is capable of doing things that I'm not seeing on WWE TV, and it makes me want to go out of my way to watch him. And honestly, for me, Matt, when I'm a fan at the time, 05, 06, I'm watching TNA. Yeah, sure, Kurt Angle's over there, and I love Kurt. He's one of my all-time favorites. But I'm watching it to check out guys like Styles and Daniels and Joe. How much of a draw do you think those guys were at the time for a company like TNA?
I mean, I think that the X Division, especially during that time, like once they had that three-way match that had so much hype, I think the X Division kind of started sneaking up on the main event scene, and the guys that had bigger names, the guys who had all this star power and all this TV time, that were, initially people would tune in to see these guys. And I think they saw the X Division guys were like, man, this is really good. Like I want to watch these guys because this is interesting. It's very different. And to me, it parallels and is very reminiscent of WCW when Nitro was at its best, when you had all these huge stars. You had this incredible roster of star power and guys who'd had tons and tons of TV time and were big legends. There was also the Cruiserweight title in WCW that like really started attracting new audience members because it was a different style. They're watching the Rey Mysterio and the Psychoses and the Billy Kidmans and Juventudes and everyone else. And like, man, this is so cool. The Eddie Guerreros. And it kind of grew into a life of its own. And I feel like the X Division kind of ran a parallel with that in TNA because it grew into a life of its own. And it was like something that was drawing a very specific fan base to watch TNA every single week.
Did you have a desire to compete in the X Division at any point?
I mean, it like wasn't something that like I wanted to do immediately. Okay. And still at this time, like, I mean, I'm born and bred a WWE guy. I'm probably more sports entertainment, in my heart than anything else. But I do think it was very cool. And I thought they were having great matches. And I've always been an advocate of great matches. So I thought it would have been cool. If I would have went to TNA, yes, I would have wanted to work with some of the X Division guys and maybe even work for the X Division title.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because you get your release during the whole love triangle stuff.
Yes.
And
I don't get my release. I get released.
Well, sure.
Technically.
You get released.
I got my ass fired.
Semantics.
For 4 or 5 weeks.
Yes. And you've talked about before, you had some conversations about coming into TNA. So it
Yes.
seems like it wouldn't have been implausible for you to show up and immediately add major equity to that division had you gone there. And I think, sure, you could have done more and you could have been higher on the card. Christian's in TNA around the same time and he's climbing up, and you certainly could have been in the heavyweight picture. But I think one of the coolest things about the X division at the time was there was upwards and downwards mobility where an X division guy could conceivably be viewed as a potential world title holder. And
Sure.
some of the world title guys would end up going down to the X division and competing there because there was value in competing in that division. And I think AJ is a big reason for that.
Yes, and I think that is very, very smart, and I am a fan of that. I love the fact that there was a point where it felt like the TNA World Title and the TNA X Division title felt very equal. Like the TNA X Division title didn't feel like a secondary title in many ways. Also, I'm a big fan of how they do that in AEW. I love how there's the AEW champion, but then there's the TBS champion, and there's the TNT champion or whatever. But I love that it seems like the world champion and the TBS or TNT champion, that they also seem like they're very much on the same level. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's smart because Vince very specifically wanted to say this is the world title and these guys are the most important. They are my draws. Then you have this next level underneath. These are the guys that can kind of go into that area. They can go down if they need to. Then you have a group underneath that, which is the mid-card guys. And then you have this underneath. And then you have these guys who open the show or whatever. And he kind of layered people. But once you start layering people like that, you kind of put the stigma on them. Sometimes they kind of get stuck in that. And I love the fact that you can have one or two different singles titles, one, two, maybe even three different singles titles. But if they all seem like they're of similar or equal value, then people don't get those bad stigmas. You know what I mean?
And around this time, you also end up facing AJ for the first time. IWC No Excuses in Monroeville, Pennsylvania on July 29th, 2005. Yes. This is right before you go back to WWE. You go 25 minutes and 56 seconds, so nearly 26-minute match there. I would imagine this was probably a pretty hyped match for you. I know you didn't get to work too many matches on the outside, but take us through this night and what that experience was like wrestling AJ for the first time.
It was great. I had a blast. Have you watched this match, John?
I have watched this match.
Yeah, I'm really happy with this match. First time working with AJ. We had great chemistry. I really enjoyed it, and I was excited to go in and wrestle him and just help boost him because I had so much momentum at that time. And I was very insistent on the finish being that way. And I was very happy it was that way. So AJ getting a win, I thought that would help him out. And it feels like me giving back to wrestling, which is something I have always taken pride in doing.
What stood out to you about AJ in that match?
He was just smooth. He was easy to work with. He got it. He just understood that it's not all about you. It's all about both people working together and working together as an orchestra, is working together in working together in synchronicity and working together on the same page for the greater good. You know what I mean? That's what I felt like he got more than anybody else. He really understood that we need to be on the same page and work together for the greater good.
What is his strongest suit as an in-ring performer?
I just think he's so talented. He's athletic. He can do anything. The fact that he's 47 and he still does these springboard 450s, and the fact that he can do all this is very amazing. And the fact that he has been able to continue doing these things after doing them for so long is something that is mind-blowing in a lot of ways.
So he's in TNA for a long time. He really settles down. That becomes his home. He goes into the world title picture, then drops out. He'd go back into it. He'd drop out. People would say, oh, he still doesn't have the personality. He's just an in-ring guy. And then he'd take a step back. There's a lot of changes. When the Hogan Bischoff regime comes in, they try to kind of repackage him and put him with Ric Flair as the next Nature Boy. That doesn't really work out. There's this period of weirdness with him, and you end up wrestling him a lot during that time, actually. In the beginning of 2011, you wrestle a few times on TV. You work a bunch of house shows with him. You wrestle him on pay-per-view at Victory Road 2011. And you also, what a fever dream this match is, you have a three-way street fight with him, Ric Flair, and yourself in Fayetteville, nonetheless.
Yeah.
Just so bizarre. What do you remember about working with AJ during this period of time? Where was he at in his career? What can you share?
There were times where I think he was getting a little frustrated because he was kind of one of the guys who would really help build the brand of TNA. I think he was a little frustrated with some of the new management and maybe them trying to rebrand him as like the new Ric Flair or some of the ideas they had. And if I'm not mistaken, I think instead of a three-way, it was a handicap. It was me and Ric Flair versus AJ, I think. And I'm pretty sure we whipped his ass.
It was a three-way, but I think you guys were kind of working together.
Working in concert.
Form. Yeah.
That's what I was wanting to say a minute ago, too, concert. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
the word escaped me. But yes, I do remember that. That was very cool to just be teaming with Ric Flair. I've teamed with Ric Flair. I've teamed with Eric Bischoff. There's a lot of crazy people I've teamed with as well. But yeah, I enjoyed it, man. Anytime I knew I was working with AJ, it was always a pleasure because he was just so easy because he got it. There's guys in wrestling that just get it. And you love wrestling with those guys that get it because it makes your life so much easier.
So you mentioned he got frustrated. He's like an OG in TNA here.
Well, I think too, he was also very outspoken. Like, no, it needs to be like this. This is what made TNA hot. We need to stay more true and more loyal.
Tell us more about that. That's really interesting.
That's what I feel like. I feel like there were things that management was doing, and AJ was very outspoken, and he really stood up as like the leader of TNA and like the face of the place, TNA. And I felt like there were times where he's like, no, we're doing too much of this, or we need to do this, or we need to change this. And I remember there were a couple times where Hogan was doing something. It's like, no, we can't do this. It can't be done that way. We need to do it like this, like that. And he became very hands-on creatively and like from a booking perspective about how to be going forward.
Well, that's interesting because I know Eric thinks very highly of AJ now, but I'm very curious at the time if they saw AJ as a top guy, as a top star. Yeah, he had been a world champion in TNA at that point.
Sure.
But let's call a spade, right? Like, I don't think AJ Styles fits the mold of what Hulk Hogan looks at as a world champion.
Right.
And I would imagine that probably hampered him a little bit in this era, especially when AJ was a big star. He was a legit guy in that company, and there's a lot of back and forth with him in 2011 into 2012, and eventually it leads us into what is referred to as one of the worst storylines in wrestling history, which is the Claire Lynch story in TNA, with him allegedly having an affair with Dixie Carter, and there's a bastard child, and this just seems so out of the comfort zone for AJ Styles. It seems so out of what we're accustomed to with him as a performer. When someone is put in a situation like that, a storyline that maybe doesn't vibe, a character change that doesn't align with who they've been, what kind of challenge does that present for the performer?
It's tough. I mean, because you have to fight your ass off to try and get what you feel like works for you. And once again, AJ, a very married guy with many children, much like me, has a gaggle. And, he had no interest in doing these romance or even teases of like having some sort of romance or some child out of wedlock or whatever else. I'm sure he wasn't high on this. I know he wasn't, because he's very much I'm a husband who loves my wife and my kids, and like that's it. I don't want to do any of this other bullshit or reference that. Like, I'm just AJ Styles, a pro wrestler. I'll do angles, but like I don't want these angles to involve like my personal life or like my family and this, that, and the other thing. So I'm sure he was frustrated by it. And it just, once again, like looking at who AJ is and like what makes AJ, I don't even really see the benefits of it in many ways. I feel like you can do some sports entertainment stuff with AJ, but I would do something that is more in his wheelhouse, because he speaks very proudly of being a very loyal husband and a very loyal and loving father to his children. So I feel like you're kind of you're doing yourself a disservice just by putting him in that position. And I'm sure that's something that he had to go fight with creative probably every single television. Whenever they went there, there was something he had to get changed or try and, make it so that he could be as comfortable as possible. I mean, I know what these battles are when creative are wanting to stick something on you that isn't going to be great. At some point you just have to like make the most of whatever you can work with, and it sucks. You have to kind of like swallow your ego and go on with it. But at the end of the day, in TNA with AJ, I think that was a bad idea to go that direction.
Yeah, and there's just so much chaos in TNA at the time. Like you leave in 2011, or you got fired. I'll say.
Yeah, I got fired. Yep. 2 times I got fired.
Put that on the badge of honor.
Yeah.
And then Jeff stays there though. Jeff is still there, even working through some of his stuff. So I know you're not there, but I'm sure you're hearing some stuff from Jeff. TNA management at the time was a disaster. I mean, it was just all over the place. The creative direction was all over the place. Things were constant. This is when like TNA picked up the LOL TNA stuff from the internet. And AJ, this guy who's been an OG, soldier through it all, is subjected to some really bad creative until beginning of 2013. And there's this whole Aces and Eights program that's been going on for months and months and months. And you can say with that what you want to. However, AJ becomes, for the first time really in his career, this true tweener character where there's a lot of ambiguousness to him. There's a lone wolf element to him. I think that's what he was even going by. He picks up a new theme song. He adds the calf crusher as his finisher. This is a guy, Matt, who could have coasted doing all the amazing things that he was doing in a pretty one-dimensional character. But he chooses to switch things up, and it would set the groundwork for the next 10 years of his career. What do you think a reinvention like that did for someone like AJ Styles?
I mean, reinventions in pro wrestling are paramount. I mean, once he'd been with TNA for 10 years at that time. It's time. It's time to change things up and go a different direction. Once again, I mean, Bryan Cranston was amazing as Walter White. You know, they did 5 seasons, almost 6, because 5 was like twice as long. But it's just hard to keep a character new and fresh once you've done everything, you know, and that's why these shows come to an end and then they play another character, whatever else. In pro wrestling, you just have to change your character. You have to change your persona, what you're doing to stay fresh, to like, once again, rebuild up an audience and gain new fans and like not become monotonous and boring. And it's very important. And it was the perfect time for AJ to do that. And also a lot of times when you're one place for too long, it's time to step out and go somewhere else and kind of get a fresh coat of paint on you that way, and a fresh start where you're in front of new fans and like you're doing a new persona, whatever it may be. And as I know you're going to speak in just a little bit, we're going to get there with AJ very soon.
Yeah, because this sets him up to become a big time star that transcends anything that TNA was doing. This time period, you know, we're getting in 2013 into 2014. He's going to be leaving TNA. You do end up facing him in NEW, New England Wrestling, in Waterbury, Connecticut on March 28th, 2014, 22-minute match. You get your win back this time.
Yeah.
What was the difference between the AJ you wrestled there and the AJ you wrestled 10 years prior?
Not a huge difference, with the exception, I mean, him as a person and his attitude and approach towards a wrestling match and the business and the industry, none of that had really changed, but he was just much more seasoned when it comes to dealing with the cutthroat politics of pro wrestling, because now he had lived in those trenches, you know, with, you know, Hulk and Eric running the company and all these other people there, you know, just, there was a lot of stuff going on at TNA. So he had lived through all that. So he was, just probably a lot more comfortable and a lot more happy just being in an environment where there was very little bullshit and there was very little pressure. And like on an indie show, when you're wrestling someone who you're friends with and someone who, you know, gets it, it's a pretty pressure-free zone.
Well, it was literally the day prior to that match that he announced he was signing with New Japan, and he was also working with Ring of Honor. And a couple weeks later, AJ Styles becomes the newest member of Bullet Club, and he aligns with Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows, the Good Brothers. Big fans of the Good Brothers here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Go check out our live show with them if you haven't. It's one of our favorite episodes. And the Bullet Club transcends to new levels, Matt Hardy. And AJ Styles is a huge reason for that. He's working primarily as a heel here. He is tearing the wrestling scene up across continents. He is truly global with the Bullet Club, and he is massive in helping leverage the Bullet Club brand and presentation to one of the hottest things in wrestling, which eventually, of course, leads to the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega becoming a part of that.
Yes.
How influential, in your opinion, was his run in Bullet Club in changing wrestling at the time?
I mean, it was huge because Bullet Club was one of those things that like really transcended the business. You know what I mean? Like once it caught a hold of people, like they didn't let go. They dug the Bullet Club, and like AJ was really the guy who started all that in many, many ways. You know, he was the guy when he was in there, it first got hot, and it was really an intercontinental type thing because it was so big in so many different places. You know, there were times and conversations while, you know, when Vince had asked people before we came back to WWE, like, why do these people keep doing this delete thing? Like, isn't this something with the Hardys? And eventually he got to that point. He said, well, bring them back here. Let's buy them. You know, if that thing's popular and our fans are doing it, let's buy them. And I remember there was a point where he said, like, where does this Bullet Club wrestle? Where's these people that are wearing these Bullet Club shirts? Where are they at? Why are they on our programming? Like, is that one of our shirts? What's that from? And they said, no, it's just this thing that got real hot in New Japan Pro Wrestling, you know, with AJ Styles and the group. And then, you know, later the Bucks and Kenny and whoever else. And he's like, well, damn it, give me the Bullet Club. I want them all. There was a time where that's a quote which Vince said in a meeting, like, damn, all these shirts, they keep coming to our shows. Give me the Bullet Club. I want them all. And that was like a legitimate deal. So AJ was really the guy who launched that, like, I feel like into the next stratosphere. You know, he made it into so much of a bigger deal. So yeah, that was a huge moment for AJ. You
like him and the Good Brothers as a trio?
I do. I think too, because their chemistry is so natural together, because they like, you know, they've changed over the years, but like AJ was such a straightforward and narrow guy, and these guys were both, you know, crazy, degenerate Good Brothers or whatever it may be, you know, and they've kind of they've straightened up their ways a little bit too, but they were just a really odd combination that just worked together, and they had a great working chemistry.
Yeah, and on his way out of New Japan, you know, he puts over Kenny big, where Kenny kicks him out of the group, and that was a huge launching point for Kenny to become a big time star, and eventually he makes his way to WWE. Nakamura makes his way to WWE, and the Good Brothers come over to WWE. It's a long time coming. AJ finally gets his opportunity to show what he's capable of doing, and he debuts at the Royal Rumble, Matt. And I really would love to know your thoughts on this, because there's no vignettes, there's no teasers. You know, there'd been some rumbling that he might be coming in, and I almost would suspect, and you know the culture at the time better than I do, but I would almost suspect there were probably some people backstage in the office and in the locker room who wanted AJ to fail upon coming in, who wanted to prove, oh, these guys aren't on our level. And when AJ comes into that Royal Rumble in 2016 at number 3, it's one of the loudest receptions you're ever going to hear. And it's a hell of a moment that launches him into the next level. Would you agree with that assessment about the culture, probably in regards to someone like AJ Styles?
I mean, probably, you know, for the longest time, WWE would kind of like project this image of like, if you're not with WWE, you are not a worldwide star. You're not known across the globe or whatever. But things were changing very rapidly at that time. You know, we have the internet, we can access information so quickly, and he was a huge deal with TNA. He was even a bigger deal with New Japan, with the stuff he did with Bullet Club, and he had built so much equity in himself, and he had became a worldwide known pro wrestling figure. So yeah, I remember when he debuted, I was so happy for him and so glad he was getting that opportunity, because like at the end of the day, it is still one of those things. I feel like to be remembered as one of the all-time greats, you almost have to go to WWE in some capacity and be there, because WWE is, you know, what stands head and shoulders above everything else at the end of the day. So yeah, I was very happy he was there. He was going to get the opportunity to compete for the WWE, and he was going to be able to show the entire world what he was made of.
But I really think that his success in WWE is a borderline miracle, because and not at his own fault, but rather because of the
system,
the structures of the system, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a very real chance that Vince could have never understood AJ. In fact, if you remember, when he comes in and they pair him with Jericho for that first feud, every single time AJ's out there, commentary's calling him a pit bull. He's a pit bull. He's small but mighty. And that's not AJ Styles.
Right.
AJ Styles is phenomenal. That's his aura.
Sure.
So why do you think, knowing Vince as well as you know him, and I'm not sure there's one true answer to this, but why do you think someone like AJ was able to break that barrier and by year's end become WWE champion?
I mean, I just think he was that talented, and I think talent always shines through at the end of the day in whatever it may be. If it's your in-ring ability, if it's your promo skills, if it's your, character work, whatever. I think ability always shines through. And Vince, he was at that point where he was just kind of locked in his belief system, right? And he believed in the antiquated system of, if you're a wrestler, you need to be big. You need to be 6'4", and you need to have these muscles because that's who people believe in. And there is truth to that. People believe in bigger people, but also pro wrestling had changed so much because people want to see more athletic contest. And that's why, that's why he did with Chad Gable, the Shorty G, AJ Styles. He's a pit bull, guys who were smaller. He's like, well, let's, reference something that's smaller, that's more vicious. So these fans, they will accept them as stars, because they're not 6'4" and they're not 6'5" and 300 pounds. That was Vince's antiquated way of thinking, So I think it was the perfect timing for AJ because he was able to go out there, he was able to do his stuff, he was able to be AJ Styles, and he was able to go out there and wrestle his ass off, and people got behind it because they got it because that mentality had changed. I look back and I think I've referenced this before in the past. If Jerry Lynn would have been, when Jerry Lynn came in back in the day and he really didn't get to do anything of substance because, he was a great worker, but he didn't have this over-the-top flashy personality and he wasn't a great speaker or whatever in Vince's mind. If he would have showed up at that age and in that physical shape, 10, 12 years later, it'd have been a totally different story because wrestling, being a great wrestler was much more accepted by the audience at that time, much like it is now.
Imagine Shelton Benjamin, right? Shelton Benjamin's
Sure.
a classic example of that. If he had been 5-6 years later, even, I think he would have had success. And it's true because AJ Styles, if he does get signed to WWE in 2001, 2002, I don't think he ever achieves this level of success.
Yeah, if he got signed then, he would probably have been gone in a couple years, and then he would still have to go to TNA, or he'd still have to go to New Japan. He'd still have to rebrand himself and build equity into himself. He would have had to build a name for himself on his own, not without WWE. I don't think WWE would have seen him through back then.
And I think there's a good life lesson to be learned from this. So much of this, and I've experienced in my industry, I'm sure you have as well, right place, right time is everything.
It is everything. Being at the right place at the right time. Timing is a crucial part of being successful. And that's why I feel like as a pro wrestler, you need to go out of your way, especially if you're trying to make a name for yourself, to every opportunity you get, every chance you get to go out and network or appear, or get your face seen somewhere, you need to go out and do it because timing is everything. You never know when you can be at the right place at the right time.
You did a couple house show matches with AJ in 2019 for the US Championship. Again, just another evolution here of both of you guys. Any recollection of those matches?
Not a lot. I just remember they were solid, easy, anytime we'd work house show matches with AJ, he got the difference between a house show match and a TV match, so it was good. You like it when those guys do that?
You and MVP had your two types of matches too.
We had our two types of match. Yes, the athletic contest, and we had the entertainment match. Depends on how late we were out the night before and how much partying we did.
He alluded to that on Zeter this week. I know you got hacked again, but you're good now. I hear. So that's good that you weren't.
I went on a little hacked hiatus.
Yeah, a little cleanse. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, a little break.
So AJ is 47 now, wrestling Cody in an I Quit match for the WWE Championship. Could you see a scenario where 47-year-old AJ Styles becomes WWE champion one more time?
I could see a scenario where AJ Styles does become WWE champion one more time, but it won't be on this occasion. not against Cody. I think Cody's reign is going to run for a while, as it should. But yeah, it's great to just put AJ in that position. They're going to have a great match. They're going to kill it, and people are really going to enjoy it.
Yeah, well, he did the whole Mark Henry fake retirement angle. last week, so he had the blue suit instead of the salmon suit. But
Yeah, the powder blue.
Powder blue instead of the salmon. Yeah, I would have gone with the salmon personally, but
I got to tell you, after like when I read something, I was like, what is going on with AJ? Like I saw him doing this cold plunge. I saw the shape he's in. I know he's doing this. I mean, I know how that affects your body. It's like, hold up, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't pass the sniff test. When we were hearing all this stuff about his retirement stuff, and then it was very cool that it was rolling out to be an angle.
It's funny you say you don't see him winning it here. I would say that I don't either. However, I could make an argument for them to pull the trigger.
Okay.
I could make the argument to pull the trigger because my biggest problem with their first match, which was an excellent match, I think Dave Meltzer gave it 5 stars. My biggest problem with it was it's just kind of a cold match, and they gave up on the story after that. There was no true follow-up on that. Then they gave a follow here a couple months later, interestingly enough. I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if Cody Rhodes, in an I Quit match, had something very personal that he had to quit over. It would add a little more dynamic to his babyface-ness. And as we talked about before, you don't need to have these long runs. Cody could get that belt back a month from now, 2 months from now, and be right back on track, having learned something along the way and overcome some actual adversity into gaining the championship back. As the babyface, it's about creating those moments and the chase. As a heel, it's about the run and putting the adversity in front of the babyface. So Cody already got that moment. He's been champion for a few months now. He's had some really good defenses in that short time. For him to have to overcome something, Stone Cold Steve Austin, this was classic Austin booking, right? Austin would win the belt, hold it for a couple months, get screwed, something would happen. He'd have to overcome adversity, chase again, get it back. I wouldn't hate if they did that with Cody because AJ's the equity guy to do that with.
Sure.
He's got the club with him too,
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with your take there.
Did I tickle your sports entertainment fancy with that booking?
Sure, yeah, I'm here for it. I would still guess it doesn't happen, but I wouldn't be mad. It wouldn't make me mad if it did.
I wish it wasn't an I Quit match because I don't think he should be quitting per se, unless they do the whole Mankind gimmick where they just roll it over the sound speakers. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think this is Drew McIntyre's moment to shine more than anything at this Clash at the Castle show. But
correct.
AJ Styles, man. I mean, all-time great, one of the best in-ring performers ever, and a true renaissance man in wrestling. Anything else you want to say on him?
No, man. Big fan of AJ Styles, both the professional and the person, and I wish him nothing but the best. And I got to see him a little bit and interact with him at Bray's funeral. He was the first person we saw whenever we pulled up, and it was nice to see him again, being under those circumstances. But I'm just so happy for him and his family and all the success that he has attained. I
do want to ask you before we go real quick. You just mentioned Bray and everything, all the teases, this Uncle Howdy stuff. It's looking like that might culminate this coming week here. What's your anticipation level for all that stuff and to see what Taylor might be able to do here?
I'm looking forward to it. I've really enjoyed all the QR codes. I've enjoyed the hidden messages and the teases and trying to put together the puzzle. It feels like an escape room in many ways, which my wife is kind of half-assed turned me into a fan of now. You're trying to figure out the escape room. Like, what do you need to do? What does this clue mean? What's next? Follow the trail, follow the breadcrumbs. So I dig it. And I'm very interested in whenever they actually physically debut and they start rolling out people for the Wyatt Six. And I'm just very, very curious of what path they're going to take to make this thing work.
What can a fresh restart like that do for performers?
I mean, it's great to have a fresh restart like that is great. It just all depends on the follow-up. And I would imagine, considering how the track record this current WWE creative staff has, it seems like they're on top of things and they've been thinking things out pretty well. It's not like week to week. It seems like they have a game plan going forward. And if they have a solid game plan for the Wyatt Six and they roll it out the right way and it starts getting over, then it can be huge for all of these people involved.
I very much agree. We'll see. I think they're going to take him pretty seriously out of the gate. I think he's going to be a player. We'll see how that all ends up going down. Here's what I can tell you very seriously, my friends. We seriously want you to show up in Atlantic City, July 13th. HardyBoysLive.com. That's with a Z. Ticket $60. It's a Hardy party, a night with the Hardys at 90s Wrestling Con in Atlantic City at ACX1 Studios at the Pier at Caesars. Get your tickets now. It's a live episode of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, followed by a Jeff Hardy concert. It is going to be a time and a half. Matt's going to be there. Jeff's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Special guests will be there. Going to be a great time. And we also encourage you, head on over to advertisewithhardy.com to get your business out in front of thousands of listeners and viewers every single week here on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Promote your business to the extreme.
Bam.
Matt Hardy, you are hard to kill, my friend. And I hope that you have a great match with Moose. Very excited for you. Anything else you'd like to add?
It's time to overcome the odds against all odds. So yes, I very excited about it. The people that are listening early, Queen Rebecca is going to be jumping on that plane with me. We're going to be flying to Chicago together, so she will be there in case the Snow Witch tries to interject herself at all during any of this contest. So yeah, it's going to be a wild night. And if you get the opportunity and you're listening this Friday morning, this is going to be an event and a match that you definitely want to tune into.
TNA against all odds. Going to be absolutely fantastic. It will be wonderful because the words have been spoken here on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We will see you next time.
Delete!
My skin's dying because you're under it. I'm done lying to myself for this, for all the wonder and believing that it's making me weak. I'll fade away and classify myself as obsolete. My skin's dying. I'm done lying.
Double J, Jeff Jarrett, here with a few of my pals to tell you about the total nonstop savings happening over at SaveWithConrad.com.
Daniel Ortiz in Angelo, Texas. We had 4 large financial unexpected emergencies, and I knew that I needed something to give us a little more breathing room. And when he mentioned we can skip 2 house payments and wipe out credit card debt and loan debt, so that's exactly what I did. I called them, and it did change everything. Diane, she was awesome. She was professional, and the important thing with her is she listened. That's what made all the difference in the world. She was patient, and anytime that I needed to talk to her, she was there. She texted back. It was a different experience from any other place. Well, I can tell you the difference that it made was over $80,000 for us. It freed up that much. My credit score went up 126 points with Save with Conrad, which made it an 802. My name is Daniel Ortiz, and I freed up $80,000 with SaveWithConrad.com.
In my world, it doesn't get any better than 5 stars. Find out how much money Conrad and his team can save you by strutting over to SaveWithConrad.com. So right now, strut on over to SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com.